Welcome all of you to the Public Planning Committee meeting of Thursday, February 23rd. Call the meeting to order. And Zendaya, are we in compliance with FOIA?
Yes, sir, we are.
Thank you very much. Please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Ms. Bryson?
Here.
Ms. Becker?
Here.
Mr. Stanford?
Here.
Mr. Ames?
Here. Thank you. Were there any comments, additions, deletions to the minutes? Hearing none, I'll accept them as submitted. Thank you. Appearance by citizens. Zendaya, I presume, based on the people who went up to your desk, that we have some citizens who would like to address us.
Yes, sir. The first I will call is Ms. Kelly LeBlanc.
Thank you all for listening to citizen comments. I'm Dr. Kelly LeBlanc, the co-chair of the Jonesville Preservation Society and the author of the survey on short-term rentals in residential neighborhoods. The survey ran for the last 2 weeks and received 850 responses from Hilton Head Island full-time residents. Questions 2 and 3, how concerned are you about an increase in short-term rentals and timeshares? 90% said that they were very to extremely concerned about both. Question 4, does Hilton Head need more visitor beds? 95% said no. Question 5, on the street where you live, do you want to limit the maximum number of visitor beds? 70% said they want 0 visitor beds on their street. 23% said they want visitor beds to be capped at a reasonable level. Question 6, are you in favor of updating the short-term rental ordinance to require permit cost based on the number of beds advertised? 92% said yes. Question 7, which impacts of short-term rentals are you most concerned about? The top concerns were traffic, quality of life, beach congestion, the environment, trash, noise, unruly behavior, and visitor parking. Question 8, the increase in short-term rentals is one reason why long-term rentals are beyond the reach of our workforce. Are you in favor of using short-term rental fees and fines to help create workforce housing solutions? 80% said yes. Question 9, we have a short-term rental ordinance but no policy. 78% said that they want Hilton Head to adopt this short-term rental policy statement. Quote, ensure that traditional residential neighborhoods are not turned into tourist areas to the detriment of longtime residents. Question 11, regarding 15 Wimbledon Folly Field, across from Islanders Beach. In 2015, the 8.4-acre property was rezoned as resort density. 76% said keep resort development out of residential neighborhoods. 63% said the town should purchase the 8.4 acres and rezone it as a park. In 2015, Bradley Circle was rezoned as resort density. They now have 6 mini hotels, which each sleep 24, but have only 2 parking spaces each. On Tuesday of this week, the town council took an agenda item off the roster which would have stopped the developer from adding 4 more mini hotels to Bradley Circle. Last week, the Charleston Post and Courier quoted David Ames as saying, quote, right now, town officials are turning their attention to fixing loopholes or language in the land management code that don't meet the community's objectives. Our question is, are you? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Zendaya? Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Kieran Storan. At some point along the way, this town began ignoring the family part of our area zoned single-family residential. And the word residential came to mean something entirely different than how it is defined in the Cambridge Dictionary. Our town council has chosen to effectively ignore the short-term rental problem and left us, the residents, to fend for ourselves. Many other communities have recognized this issue and have acted to protect their residents by placing caps and controls on short-term rentals. For example, Sullivan's Island prohibited new vacation rentals over 20 years ago. James Island In order to have a legal bed and breakfast or a short-term rental, the home must be full-time owner-occupied. Kiowa put a 20% cap on R1 and R2 zoning districts. The City of Charleston, including Daniel Island, whole house short-term rentals are prohibited in the City of Charleston. Under the current ordinance, homeowners are required to inhabit the home while hosting short-term guests, and no more than 4 adults may occupy a short-term rental at once. The town of Mount Pleasant capped short-term rentals at 400. Folly Beach, on February 7th of this year, a special election was held, resulting in a cap of 800 licenses for investor-owned short-term rentals. Myrtle Beach. On Hilton Head, you often hear people say we don't want to turn into a Myrtle Beach. Well, perhaps we should take a leaf out of their book. In Myrtle Beach, most traditional residential neighborhoods are not zoned for short-term rentals. You will notice that all of these are South Carolina coastal communities. So why isn't Hilton Head protecting its residents? It's either because you can't or you won't. The above communities have demonstrated that can't is not a valid excuse. We were promised that phase 2 of the short-term rental ordinance would be available the last quarter of last year. Now we hear that it will be the end of this year. In the meantime, the island is losing valuable residents and workforce housing that is being converted into STRs. No one is saying that we can't have short-term rentals, but the integrity of our residential neighbourhoods can only be restored by eliminating commercial short-term rentals in areas zoned single-family residential. I would ask the town to please help us with this. Thank you.
Rhonda Carver. Rhonda Carver.
Good morning.
How are you? All right, I'm here again. I'm here to speak on behalf of Bradley Circle, as you guys are well aware of. Not 2 weeks ago, there was an urgent matter for a developer in our area that has short-term renters to have a plot stamped. It was imminent, so he could sell his lot back to himself so he could subdivide that lot to get an extra lot and more density. We went above and beyond as a town to make sure that that happened, and now I sit before you with the same urgency to push through some amendments in the LMO that won't just serve one developer, it will serve the entirety of Hilton Head Island. Our tiny community of Bradley Circle has grown by 45,000 square feet with only the addition of 5 homes, all with 4 stories above garage, additional 125 people plus a week, and it's not going to stop. 10 cars per house, 2 more are being built, and 5 more are coming after that, which are expected to be similar in size. So we plead with you. We will have another 50,000 square feet on an acre of land. Think of where you live. I gotta assume you live in a gated community and you have bigger lots. Imagine if you had 50,000 square feet next to your home. So, and we are going to have that in just 10 homes. We have a very, very small area. I stood before you in 2016 asking for the same thing. So please help us. With all the extra people in the neighborhood and our tiny little community, the wear and tear on our roads shows. The drainage doesn't work, pathways are getting destroyed, our wetlands are getting devastated. There is oil leaks from the constructions, chlorine water leaks into our marsh on a daily basis. People walk through seagrass and dunes to make it to the beach, parking on the wetlands area because there's not enough space. I understand development and expect that this is a part of where I live, but this is ludicrous. Overdevelopment that's ruining HHI as a whole. We can build, but we need to be smarter or the aftermath is irreversible. We need to amend the LMO. We need to work on the floor area ratio to ensure that smaller homes get built on these lots, on these teeny tiny lots of 0.12. We need vegetation, open space, safety in our neighborhoods. Please vote in favor of parking spaces to be amended to 19 by 8 feet, 9 feet high, so that these garages can fit these SUVs and these trucks that are coming on vacation. Vote in favor to amend it so that there is a parking spot for each bedroom. Right now, the ordinance says there only needs to be 4. Who comes to a 10,000 square foot home with 4 cars? I'm going to close out and say, this is eminent, okay? You are the only ones that have the superpower to make these changes, like the need to stamp the plot so a developer could sell it to himself. You need to do the right thing.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Lee Joyner. Lee Joyner.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm losing my neighborhood. I currently live in what was my parents' home for the last 41 years in South Forest Beach. It's a single-family residential zone. I've seen an awful lot of changes over the last 41 years. Sure, some of the homes in my neighborhood are second homes, and a couple might have even been rentals for most of the last 40 years, but it's completely out of hand now. There are very few of us who live there permanently anymore. As properties have sold, they've almost exclusively been turned into short-term rentals. With the last few years seeing alarming growth of these commercial enterprises. They don't even pretend to be single-family units anymore. Some of them now advertise that they sleep 32 people. That's 8 families in my book. These houses certainly don't pretend to be residences either. They're commercial enterprises earning $20,000 to $100,000 a month. Some of them are not even owned by individuals and are owned by investment corporations instead. Why does the town allow these businesses to operate in a single-family residential neighborhood? Don't those words mean something? Please. Even the 2-bedroom house 2 doors down that has never in my memory housed more than 1 couple and 1 small child now boasts that it suddenly has 4 bedrooms and sleeps 14. The house isn't any bigger than it ever was. They've just put bunk beds in the hallway and the dining room, and now they're bedrooms. There's no room for all these people to be inside the house unless they're all in bed, so they stay outside most of the time. 14 people don't have to be rowdy to be loud, but when they are rowdy, they're very loud. I like parties, I like music and fun. I even occasionally like to stay up late, but not every single day. There is a nonstop party going on in my neighborhood from now till Thanksgiving. By the time renters have had enough partying and are ready to settle down a bit, there's a new crew coming in directly behind them to start up again. I used to ask people to turn down their music or remind them that this is a family neighborhood when they would play explicit music or get really loud with their vulgar language. But I don't anymore. Now I've turned into that nasty neighbor who calls the police. I don't want to be this person. I want to be walking my neighbor's dog when they're out of town and bringing a casserole to the family who just lost their grandma. I want to say hi to the kids getting on the school bus and gather with the neighbors to celebrate the 4th of July. I want my neighbors to check on me after a tropical storm and for us all to work together to clean up the common areas of the neighborhood. What I really want is to live quietly in the beautiful natural surroundings of Forest Beach that I've known for so many years with other single-family actual neighbors and not the steady stream of partying tourists and absentee corporate owners. So I ask you today, please, will you help save my neighborhood?
Thank you very much.
Edwina Dunlap.
Before you begin the time, I just want to explain, you know that I live in Hilton Head Plantation, so I'm here today speaking on behalf of a Jonesville resident who couldn't be here. This is a resort destination, and that is not changing anytime soon. Our town thrives because of tourism, but reckless tourism is not good for anyone. I thank the town and the town council for passing the recently approved short-term ordinance. It is a good first step, but it's just that, a first step. This island needs to be a responsible resort destination with designated areas for short-term rentals and resorts, restrictions and ordinances to ensure vacationers respect the island and those around them, and requirements surrounding what are acceptable dwellings to qualify as short-term rentals. My heart goes out to our South End neighbors who are talking now, concerned that that area is too crowded, and while that's very true, true, it does not mean we start forcing vacationers into residential neighborhoods. The town needs to begin managing the number of visitors it can handle. When we purchased our home, we made the decision to buy in a residentially zoned neighborhood, not to allow developers from out of town to swoop in and take advantage of loose laws and buy up properties and turn them into cash cows. Jonesville is not inundated with STRs at this point, but with what we've seen allowed and passed through review in our neighborhood currently, it's just a matter of time if something is not done to restrict STRs. Verbo, Airbnb, newly formed resort STR resort collaborations have changed the game, and it's time for the town to catch back up. This town has a responsibility to its residents, the people you represent, as well as the vacationers, to provide a balanced and mutually beneficial existence that keeps visitors coming back and invested in our town, and residents welcoming them back. Plopping short-term renters in the middle of residential neighborhoods does not promote that balance. Residential neighborhoods are not equipped to handle turnover traffic, nor to accommodate the additional traffic inevitable with having multiple families share vacation rentals with multiple cars. The Jonesville community has already been put at risk with the development of Bailey's Cove, doubling our daily traffic and infrastructure usage. If the homes within it become short-term rentals, we would never be able to leave our homes, and without any current max density analysis, who knows what our little peninsula can even endure. Residential neighborhoods also don't provide amenities for vacationers to enjoy within them, or in most cases, even nearby. I was on the committee to stop short-term rentals in Hilton Head Plantation, and we are so thankful. Help these people.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Donnie Kunich.
Good morning and thank you. My name is Donnie Kunich, and I'm here to speak a little bit about not only the heart of everybody here who is a resident. The one underlying factor we're not even thinking about is not just what it's affecting our livelihood, but we're bringing all these people in, but we don't have the workforce to sustain the restaurants, the hotel cleaning, just the everyday life. As a result, with the impact that the short-term rental market has put on our homes, why would any investor turn their home, short-term rental home, into a workforce housing type of situation when they can make double or triple the income? The town has to step in. We got here some way, and now we have to find a way to get out of it. You know, our former mayor, and I want to quote him, and it's important to understand this because every person in this room feels the same way. He says, Hilton Head is a brand, and this was from the Post and Courier, has always been a quality and the experience opposed to the number of people on the beach, in a restaurant, in the crammed houses. So the impact on the brand, the impact on the brand to have the wrong kind of units in the wrong place is very significant. So it's something that we've known about. The bonus program that we speak about in your strategic plan doesn't work, because you put too many limitations on the value of the home in the future, or we put limitations on the income the individual has to have to even stay in one. There's a better fix. I don't have it. It's obvious the homeowners here who live here representing each neighborhood is upset with what's going on in their neighborhood. It's not home anymore. It's a traffic jam. After 40 years of living here, coming home every day, I look at the traffic and I find alternate ways to get home on time, but more importantly, to leave. So it's up to you to find a way to resolve where we've come to. Find a way to have a happy meeting between our home, rentals, and most importantly, the people who support this island, the workforce. If we don't stop now, we won't have a solution, and we're going to implode on ourselves. And I ask you to look into it greatly. I'm sure everybody here represented has their own point of views. I'm sure rental companies are here that have their own point of views, but the bottom line is we have to protect the people who live on this island, who put you where you are today.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
Daniel Anthony.
Morning. For the record, my name is Daniel Anthony. As you all well know, short-term rentals have become an enormous problem in residential neighborhoods. The residents and the JPS team are here today to convey to the town the concerns we all have in regards to short-term rentals and how they affect residential neighborhoods across the island. We have already heard from different various speakers about the various concerns of short-term rentals. I would like to talk to you today about the proposed STR policy that we, the JPS team, has created. Give citizens the option to utilize their properties to generate extra income from short-term rentals as long as all of the following policy objectives are met. Ensure that traditional residential neighborhoods are not turned into tourist areas to the detriment of long-term residents. Ensure any regulation of short-term rentals does not negatively affect property values or property tax revenue. Ensure that homes are not turned into mini hotels or party houses. Minimize public safety risk and the noise, trash, and parking problems often associated with short-term rentals without creating additional work for the local police department. Maximize the availability of affordable housing options by ensuring that no long-term properties are converted into short-term rentals. Ensure that short-term rentals are taxed in the same way as traditional lodging providers to ensure a level playing field. Now, how is this accomplished? This is going to be fun. By establishing a 40% FAR immediately. All parking is to be based on square footage of short-term rental dwelling unit. One parking space for every 1,000 square feet of the short-term dwelling unit. The short-term rental permit fees to be based on the square footage of the short-term rental dwelling unit. A $250 fee will be charged for the first 1,000 square feet. A fee of $150 will be charged for each additional 1,000 square feet. All short-term rental units will be inspected for compliance annually. All owners wishing to rent their property must establish a South Carolina residency. All short-term permit fees and fines are to be used for the enforcement of GOVOS. I respectfully ask the PPC to advance this policy to the Town Council for review at the next Town Council meeting. In closing, let me say this. There are places on this island for short-term rentals, but it's not in residential neighborhoods. Y'all need to understand what that term means, residential neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Mary Liz Wozniak.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Nice to see some of you again. My face is becoming familiar. My name is Marilis Wozniacki, and I'm the board president of the Hilton Head Island Motor Coach Resort. Thank you for allowing me to address you about our concerns again about the deep well and reverse osmosis project adjacent to our resort. We emailed our lengthier notes, so I know Krista's out, but you'll be getting a copy of those. First, I want to give you an overview of who we are. Our resort has been here since 1978 and sits on 50 acres of land. It's a 5-star rated motor coach resort throughout the country and includes 401 privately owned lots with just under 800 tax-paying owners. Being on this beautiful island, it is a destination that attracts people from all over the country. A number of our owners live here full-time and have retired here, and many others are here for at least 6 months per year. For all of us, this is home. On average, the current value of each lot is about $250,000, and the average cost of a motorhome is about $400,000. So as you can see, we have a huge investment in this lifestyle. With regard to the project, please know we don't begrudge anyone from safe drinking water. Where our concerns lie are that the project is being constructed so close to us, and we're worried about short and long-term negative effects. Our main concerns include noise pollution, health hazards, and decrease in our property values. And I would like to throw in, we are zoned light commercial, but for all intents and purposes, we are a residential community for sure. We were never notified of this project and only found out when we witnessed the land being cleared. The buffer along our property line is totally gone. We met with the South Island PSD and others and were assured certain steps would be taken, and we have suggested steps that would mitigate the negative impact. So far, we've seen no results. When I inquired why this particular site was chosen, I was told he didn't even know we were back there. Considering we've been here for 45 years, we find that pretty shocking. The 40-foot-high, 300,000-gallon water holding tank that was built to irrigate Wexford's golf course was built only 30 feet from our property line, and it's now our direct view on that side of our resort. The holding tank was supposed to be painted a dark Charleston green so it would better blend into the environment. Even something as simple as that did not occur. Several of us visited Cordelia Parkway plant. It's much smaller than this one, and it's extremely noisy. In closing, we are asking that the decision makers seriously consider our concerns. We believe this project can be a benefit to the community without having dire consequences on the 800 of us who have made this resort and this island our home. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Meredith.
Bud Grindle.
Good morning. My name is Blaine Bud Grindle, and I live at 133 Arrow Road. I'm here again today to ask for your concern and attention to the SIPSD project on Dunnigan's Alley. I have submitted written comments that will be distributed, and I ask you to read them carefully to understand our position. Since construction on this project began, we have met with town staff, officials, and officials of the PSD. While we completely understand and support the construction of this needed deep well, we'd like to work with all of you to make this project the least impactful on all the residents of our neighborhood and Wexford. Our focus at this point has been studying the sound characteristics of their equipment based on a visit to the smaller plant on Cordillo Parkway. This committee is responsible to the residents to ensure modifications to the town meet the town codes. That hasn't always been done. We have made suggestions to the PSD regarding the location of noise-producing equipment in Phase 2. Their preliminary design showed that much of the noise-producing equipment was facing our neighborhood. With some hopefully minor relocations and some sound deadening walls, we think the noise will be reduced down to town code levels or below. We supplied them a drawing showing the proposed locations. We have not received a response from them as usual. We hope that this board will support us and participate in the process to develop a design that improves the island and doesn't degrade our neighborhoods. The PSD has not responded to any of those suggestions. Our study has shown that many of us will be exposed to a constant level of 60 to 70 decibels 24 hours a day. The plant is in at maximum production at midnight. That exceeds the town limits in your own code. We are downstream from the mist from the cooling towers, which likely will contain biological matter such as Legionella disease. We are too close to the towers according to standard design practices. I ask this commission to carefully review their next application, paying particular attention to the noise levels that will be generated, the excessive runoff that is flooding our properties, and the location of cooling towers and the known health hazards associated with them. I ask you to scrutinize their next permit request very carefully. The long-term effects of their building construction, location, and soundproofing will all influence the quality of life for all of us. We are a neighborhood, and I invite our audience to go down the street to Dunnigan's Alley and see what's being built there and see if you'd want that in your backyard. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Jeannie Kangas.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name's Jeannie Kangas. I own and live in the Hilton Head Motor Coach Resort. I'm speaking today because of the SIPSD water treatment project and how it's impacting our resort owners and renters. The plant is being constructed in 2 phases. Phase 1 involves building a water tank, drilling 2 wells, 1 shallow and 1 deep, 3,800 feet, spanning approximately 15 to 16 months. Phase 2 involves the construction of the RO plant, 6 cooling towers, other related equipment, and another water tank, spanning an additional 3 years with expected completion in 2027. Phase 1 has been permitted and is in process. To date, we have endured site clearing and preparation, construction noise, disruption during the first water tank construction and water runoff. Presently, the first well is being drilled. Phase 2 is not yet permitted. If approved as proposed, once the plant is operational, we will be listening 24/7 nonstop to plant operations, including cooling towers, generators, fans, and other equipment, which are the equivalent to 6 locomotive engines in our backyard. We believe the excessive noise will inhibit enjoyment of our properties and even sleeping through the night. We have also learned that these cooling towers harbor deadly Legionella, which is, we all know, not good. We're here today because we have been told that Phase 2, which addresses the construction of the operating plant, has not yet been permitted. Presently, SIPSID's existing Phase 2 project schematic has no sight or sound mitigation incorporated. At this stage, there is time and opportunity to carefully evaluate the proposed layout and design. For example, we have been advised that cooling tower design and selection is critical to noise generation, and/or that simply rearranging the cooling towers can direct noise away from our resort rather than directly into our resort as presently proposed. In addition, we have been advised that sight and sound barriers can easily be added. We have reached out to SIPSID and have received no indication that they have any intention of addressing our concerns. And because SIPSID has already, 1, disregarded their required property buffer, and 2, has not taken into concern the water runoff, this project needs thoughtful oversight. We ask that the Planning Committee carefully review the permit application for Phase 2, which addresses the construction of the operating plant, and before approval and permitting of Phase 2, require that SIPSID incorporate sight and sound mitigation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jerry Sister.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Jerry Seister. I'm a permanent resident of the island here. I like to think of myself as more a permanent tourist because I came here as a tourist. Short-term rental effects on the economy and tourism. Short-term rentals pay more in property taxes and pay for our schools. With less short-term rentals, the residents' taxes would be increased to make up the difference. Short-term rentals owners employ property managers, cleaners, service providers, and others. The owners support local stores in order to furnish and stock their homes. The primary source of revenue on Hilton Head Island is income tax, followed closely by sales tax. We have no manufacturing here and rely on services. While tourists support businesses, the real revenue comes from the W-2 service earners. Our resident population could not support all of the services we have on the island. We must have tourists to fund our island. Short-term rentals have a smaller green space footprint, keeping tourist accommodations in harmony with the island's natural environment, as in Charles Fraser design for the island. The large multi-level hotels, timeshares, and resorts are eyesores and will get more numerous if the smaller detached house and villa accommodations are eliminated. No one wants to see more hotels on Hilton Head Island. Hotel rooms are not well suited for the multi-night stay for more than a couple of people. Families prefer more square footage of short-term rentals. And if we minimize the amount on Hilton Head Island, they will take their vacation dollars to another location. Short-term renter owners have the incentive to update and upkeep their properties to keep them attractive to prospective guests. This helps the island's keeps the island beautiful and property values higher. Short-term rentals bring in tourists who spend their money on the island, keep businesses open, and employees working. They also pay sales and accommodations tax, which helps to fund our government, and pay for amenities on the island that residents also enjoy. Most short-term rental owners consider their rental homes their second home, and many plan to use their short-term rentals as their permanent home. The owners care about the island in all aspects, such as the economy, the infrastructure, wildlife, and the natural beauty of Hilton Head Island. They are not disinterested investors. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Richard Albanos.
For the record, my name's Richard Alvanos. I am a resident of Hilton Head Island. Didn't plan on speaking today, but since the floor was open, I thought I'd take the opportunity and come and speak before you. I've been coming here since about 1967, owned property here since 1970, so I've seen a lot of changes. The property we bought was in a single-family residential neighborhood. That says it all. When you have these short-term rentals and they start putting 4, 5 families in one house, that's not single family anymore. So you just need to protect what we have paid for and what we came here for. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Keith Sledge. Keith Sledge. Oh.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. I know you hear many concerns. Some of those are routine, some are urgent, and some are emergency situations. I left a package for each of you to look at after we all finish here. This is a picture of what I see out my back door. You can hardly tell the difference between the Surf Watch building and these other things that are built side to side with no space in between by a single developer in our neighborhood. I left you a plat that where he has bought 5/8 of an acre at the opening to Bradley Circle. Now there's 3 1/8 acre lots and a 1/4 acre lot. Now he has sold the 1/4 acre lot from one of his corporations to another corporation owned by himself, so that he can subdivide that into 2 1/8 acre lots. So now we're in a position, under the current regulations, if he brings his plans today or before y'all take action, he'll be able to build 5 more 10-bedroom units on a little over half an acre. If the floor area ratio and parking rules are not established right away, this will certainly happen. We're in a 100-yard dash with this developer. It's our entire community versus one person. And I really hope that y'all will side with our community. This is not something that can wait on the entire LMO rewrite. I'm going to be asking Mr. Orlando to move this along, to pull out 2 things that will help not only us, but everybody in this room. If you establish a floor area ratio of whatever percentage, 30, 40, 50%, I don't care. These things are almost 200%. These houses will be 10,000 square feet if he wants to, which he has before, so I have no reason to believe he'll change. 10,000 square feet houses on 5,400 square foot lots, a ratio of nearly 2 to 1. If you in your community have a 1/4 or 1/3 acre lot next to you, do you want 20, 25, or 30 bedrooms next to you? This is what we have. Every night in my backyard, there are party decks on 5 houses, and they raise Cain as long as they want to. We can call the sheriff. Sometimes they come, sometimes they can't. I need you to please work with Mr. Orlando and Mr. Collin and their staffs. We need to carve out immediately floor area ratio and decent sized parking, 3-dimensional parking spaces, so that they can't do what they did now and have little parking garages that are 6 feet above 6 feet. I can barely walk into them. Cars can't park there. So please protect our community. This is an emergency situation. And also, you'll be doing everyone in this room, everybody that lives on this island, a favor, and we certainly appreciate it.
Thank you, Keith.
Peter Hettinger.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Peter Hettinger. After visiting the island for decades with my family, we were fortunate enough just this past year to purchase a home in North Forest Beach. I really wish we'd have done it a couple years ago, but we didn't. Like many homeowners here, we enjoy the home in the off-season as much as possible, but we use a local rental agency to help us in peak times of the year to rent the home to short-term rentals to help offset some of the expenses. Hilton Head Island has been known as a family destination with wonderful beaches and abundance of golf courses and so on for as long as I can recall. Although there are numerous hotel and condo alternatives, most families prefer to rent a home so that it is spacious enough to include their siblings, their family members. And in our case, we get together with my brother, sister once a year. It's our opportunity to connect our families together. And short-term rental homes and the tourism industry are critical to the success of Hilton Head's local economy. Short-term rental homes fuel the economy, provide great service jobs, and they generate the revenue from tourism that supports many of Hilton Head's local activities, the schools, the beaches, roadway improvements, bike paths, parks, and police and emergency services. However, I do understand that there needs to be a balance that's struck between local full-time residents and visiting seasonal guests. I personally was in favor of all the short-term ordinances that you guys just passed, particularly regarding the parking issues and noise control and trash and so on, especially guest safety. My concern is that we're kind of just I know that the last couple of years have been a little crazy with everything COVID related and the pandemic, and I personally have seen more visitors here than in the past. So my caution is, can we please just be a little patient, see what settles out, see what the local ordinances that we just passed, what they generate for everybody. And I'm very confident that, like some of the communities down here on the island, that whether it's Palmetto Dunes or Sea Pines, will strike a balance that works for everybody. And takes care of what the Jonesville Preservation Society is looking to achieve and so on. So that is just my word of caution. I've lived in an area, we lived in New England for a number of years and had a home on Cape Cod and saw what lack of regulation how that negatively impacts what's going on. And I just be cautious of over-regulating and destroying essentially the goose that laid the golden egg for the economy here on Hilton Head. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sadea, before we go on, how many more do we have?
3.
All right, then we'll proceed.
Mr. Andrew Brown.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good to see everyone. I come here today to speak on behalf of the vacation rental industry. I am the president of the Hilton Head Vacation Rental Alliance. I'm also involved in the South Carolina Vacation Rental Alliance, and saying today to you as members of this council and our greater council, I will be the incoming president of the Vacation Rental Management Association, the international governing body of vacation rentals. So if we want to have a real conversation about how to properly regulate this industry, I stand before you offering my services to do so. When we talk about short-term rentals, we talk about what's the issues with Jonesville. We talk about the issues with Bradley Beach. We have just started on a journey of regulating this industry. We need to understand that we have the ability as Hilton Head Island to set the gold standard for regulation. That is very important when it comes to trying to work a balance. I myself am a 21-year resident. I myself and my partner have 23 employees that we employ. I myself and my partner have over 250 service providers that we use just for our organization. And I am one of 43 different rental companies on the island. So please understand the impact that if we jump before we know the consequences could have on our entire environment. A month ago today was the strategic planning session. Were any of these items brought up during the strategic planning session? The answer is no. If the town council has a strategic plan, it needs to sit and follow that plan, even though there are these types of items. The other item that I am extremely disappointed about is, and we have done this before, the advisory council needs to be started now. You have people in this room that want to voice their concerns. We have the ability to help. There are people on both sides of this matter. The advisory council could be a clearinghouse instead of wasting all of this time in front of the public planning committee to be able to take those issues, discuss them, have collaboration, have cooperation, and then come back to the public planning committee instead of wasting an hour plus of time for you to really do the business of our town government. Again, regulations and caps are not things that have been discussed on the roadmap until recently. You sent out a survey, which I will go on record of saying is completely obtuse and irresponsible to have not, one, used the towns sending out a survey that did not discuss with the vacation rental community at all. There are thousands of people that work in this industry. And for you to have sent out something discussing caps and limitations without our consultation, again, is reckless and irresponsible. Thank you.
Micah Cooper Bailey.
Good morning. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too. I live on the north end, but I'm here with supporting Jonesville people. I want to match his anger, but on the other side. As you know, I am one of the disgruntled service people on the island who could barely afford to live here at $1,555 a month for a one bedroom in one of the very few short or long-term rental communities left. I want to say that all the great service providers that people keep talking about, all these great jobs, well, we're not going to be here if we can't live here. I am not going to commute to this island when I can make more living in Bluffton and maybe even have a roommate in a new apartment. So please consider that when you think about short-term rentals. It's not just destroying neighborhoods where communities, you know, kids have no one to play with because there's nobody on their street that lives there. It's not just that. It's not just the environment. It's not just that people spent their whole life working to buy a house here, and then now they've got to see a monstrosity, you know, next door that they were never planning on. It's that you will have nobody to mow your lawns. You'll have nobody to walk your dogs. You won't have anybody to staff the ER. You won't have anybody at restaurants. You will not have anybody in the resorts. There will be nobody here. No one like me, if you guys don't think about us when you're considering short-term rentals. We need long-term affordable housing on this island. I will say it at every meeting. You will get tired of seeing me, but that is my job now. So thank you.
You're welcome.
And lastly, Mr. Chairman, Risa Prince.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'll try to make this brief. I know the Town Council has been working to craft short-term rental regulations with the goal of balancing the needs of residents with the rights of property owners for well over a year. The Phase 1 recommendations were implemented January 1st of this year. Short-term rental properties generate town revenues in excess of those of full-time residents like me, including a higher base property tax. They pay school taxes, A-tax, H-tax, and beach renourishment dollars. Eliminating STRs completely would have a significant detrimental effect on our local economy, not only due to decreased tax collections, but also because property values would drop as STR owners move their investments to other markets where they can achieve similar rates of return that they currently enjoy here. As part of your initial regulation discussion, there was a recommendation for the Vacation Rental Advisory Committee. That committee should include residents like those who spoke today, business owners, and the industry like Mr. Brown, to assess the results of the Phase 1 regulations and make further recommendations to Council. The Phase 1 data is currently being collected. I recommend that this committee move now to impanel that advisory committee so that they're ready to analyze the program cost versus revenue collected, the community impact of Phase 1 regulations, and to develop the Phase 2 changes for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Risa. I think I'm speaking for the four of us up here. I would like to thank all of you for taking time out of your day to share your thoughts, and also thank you for your decorum. As you may be aware, sometimes in town council meetings, we are challenged in that way. I heard, and I think the four of us heard, what is on your mind today. The challenge that we have is finding the balance between the residents' property rights, the businesses, within the laws that this state has. We hear you. We understand the challenges that you have in your neighborhoods, the traffic, and so on and so forth. We are pushing, as a council, to find that right balance. Thank you again for coming, and of course, you're welcome to stay here, but if you'd like to excuse yourself now, please do, and as quickly as possible. Otherwise, we'll continue with our...
Chair, before you move on, I'd like to have an opportunity to address those who have come here to speak so passionately about things that are important, that haven't just come from the last week or two or month, but years, if I may.
Go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, thank you all for coming and speaking up. Thank you for the united voice that reaches from the north to the south end of this island and across. There are things that we are addressing, that is true, and we do look forward to seeing how the balance from what we've already taken steps towards will play out and affect the future. I think you can hear clearly that there are a number of items that we have not addressed, that the people who are being impacted by the short-term rental phenomena here on the island want us to address. And while we're working quickly, I think it is important that we ask our town manager to make that happen, and make that happen as quickly as possible, specifically related to items that will impact future permitting and development, because it's not all about the short-term rentals as they exist today. It's about the future short-term rentals that will be built tomorrow. So the FAR, the floor area ratio, is an important aspect that should move as a priority ahead of all others. The idea of a parking spot for a bedroom or for per square foot that increases the opportunity for those cars not to be parked on top of each other in yards, and yards becoming gravel parking lots, from them parking down the streets in our grocery stores and our parks, and then being shuttled over, taking up spaces for our residents. So those two items alone not only impact the future, the present, but they can impact the future and how we begin truly to address the balance that we seek. Some have asked, we got here, now how do we get out of it? And those two items alone will address that. I think beyond those, we've heard a suggestion from the Jonesville Preservation Group that they have others that they would like us to forward to town council and on to our town manager. And I think there's no harm and actually taking that up here today and moving that forward so that it can be considered in a real way that will cause real impacts to create a better quality of life for our residents and for our workforce long-term. And so to do that is not doing our duty and holding up our responsibility to our residents. And then on another matter, I do want to mention with the motor coach issue, I've heard you speak at least 3 times now. I don't know if you've gotten any attention, but after this meeting, I will promise you that I will make sure that you get the attention that I can bring to your cause.
We're going to move on to new business at this time. Discussion establishing the town of Hilton Head Island growth framework.
But I actually asked, before you do, Chair, I did ask that we take, and I would like to make a motion, that we take the recommendations that were presented to us for consideration and pass them on to our town council to look at more closely and determine whether or not we want to pass them on to our town manager as a direction. It was discussed in our strategic plan, as a matter of fact, that we would make a priority at looking at the land management ordinance and the conditions with regard to development, overdevelopment, redevelopment, however you want to say it, on this island. So I'm going to make a motion that we take the document that the Jonesville Presentation Group has put together and move it forward for further consideration.
I think that is a motion that is out of order. It's not on the agenda, but is there a second? Is there a second? Seeing no second, we're going to move on to new business. Discussion establishing a town of Hilton Head Island growth framework. Excuse me.
I'm going to ask my council.
I mentioned decorum. We're going to move on to the next item on the agenda.
Is it important to respond just in terms of consideration to our residents?
I'm sorry, Madam Becker. Please. Thank you. Sean, please.
Yes, sir. Just before we move on to the next item, I know we want to move on with business. I just do want to point out that we have changes that we're currently working on to the LMO to address some of these short-term pinch points and issues. When the town council had their strategic plan back in January, we looked at a 60 to 90-day time frame. We're working with our internal team, laser focused on this. We've had a couple of different charrettes, and it'll lead into some of these next items. But we will deliver short-term amendments to the land management ordinance. There are some that are already going through the process in that 60 to 90-day period. And so we're executing based on that direction that came at that point. We will overhaul our entire LMO by the end of the year to include the district planning and the growth framework that we're going to be discussing here shortly when we get to it. So I just want to make sure we're pointing that out.
As long as you brought that matter up, is the FAR under consideration? Is the parking issue under consideration?
Yes, sir. Those are all part of the short-term amendments that we will be bringing forward in that first batch.
Thank you, Sean. Who is going to present the framework?
I want to just provide some overview because I don't think I've ever been more excited about a time in Hilton Head's history since I've been here. I've been here, it's my 17th year. We've been talking about a master plan for Hilton Head Island. In my previous work, I did a lot of redevelopment plans, and so I was excited when I came to Hilton Head because I thought we would transition into that master planning, looking at redevelopment, and I'm happy that we're finally there. We looked at the Mid-Island District over the period of a little over a year and brought that forward to Town Council in November. That established kind of the framework on how we would evaluate other districts and bring everything together. It was missing a couple of key components that we're including in this part of the process. One is that conditions and trends. Building on the comprehensive plan that was approved by council and built through the community, As you work through and adopt that process, it should translate into your strategic planning, it should translate into your implementation tools, including the land management ordinance, your zoning, and so forth. We have not had a future land use map on Hilton Head Island in my tenure, and so this effort will guide a future land use map that provides the right consistency, development levels, both for public and private investment, to kind of reset. So we will complete the conditions and trends. We need to really understand where we're at on some of these key things. Short-term rentals were brought up here today, so I want to cover that just briefly. We do have the Good Neighbor program in place. We are actively working to permit the short-term rentals, so they're part of that program. We will have, I believe, on April 15th, the first quarter report on confirmed short-term rentals that we have here. It'll continue to grow as new listings come online over time, but we'll be able to have that data to share. I know there's been some questions when that would be available, and April 15th is the date. So we'll be able to track that trend, really understand the size and magnitude of short-term rentals. In the comprehensive plan, there was some discussion about what's the appetite on Hilton Head Island for growth. And if we're roughly at 40,000 permanent residents or permanent population today, in that plan it talked about the neighborhood of 50,000. So we need to figure out how that growth is going to happen and be intentional on how it happens. Look at short-term rentals. If you had 2 people per house and you want to grow 10,000, it's 5,000 more residential units across the entirety of the island. That doesn't factor in if those homes are built as short-term rentals, right? That doesn't contribute to your permanent population. So we need to look at that. If a third or a half of the homes being built are in the short-term rental bucket, then you have to have twice that number of units to get to that, where the appetite for growth was. Or you have to look at where that balance point is, as Councilman Ames mentioned. So the condition and trends assessment, really understanding where our capacities are, where are there opportunities from growth from the systems we have on the island, is very important. The growth framework map will provide the foundation for where public and private investment and growth should and should not happen. We're trying to base that, again, about building on an iterative map. Let's protect those areas that we know should not be developed. We have several town holdings that we know through the funding sources should be protected by based on the funding that was used to acquire them. There are environmentally protected areas that we should protect. So let's build that map and understand the areas that we want to protect and preserve. Environmental protection is at the very top of our list. And then we know where there's areas where activity has occurred, where it makes sense, and where there's capacity for additional growth based on transportation, other infrastructure, water, sewer, mobility. And so we're trying to build that map using that information. We know that Hilton Head Island will grow. To what level, we're going to find out and determine, and where that should happen is part of this exercise. The district planning will get down to more fine-tuned detail of where we are going within the specific sub-areas, and then that will all be used together to create this future land use map, which will guide that public and private investment. And having those key items in place will put us in a position where we know what the expectations are. We can calibrate our code to make sure that we are driving in that direction and making the changes that the community has been asking for and that I've been expecting to deliver for some time. So I wanted to provide that overview. I know I probably stole a lot of what Missy's going to cover, but that's the direction that we're on. She's going to give you a little more detail because we have been working with consultants and our team. And so I told her, Missy, take charge, and I'm going to get out of the way, but I wanted to share that for the group. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
Welcome, Missy.
Missy Lewick, Assistant Community Development Director. I'm very excited to also talk about these projects. I think Sean did pretty much take everything that I was going to share with you, but really they're both threaded together and linked intricately, and also to the LMO project that will be on your agenda next month. The growth framework map, as Sean already discussed, is a way to look at the community and where we envision that growth, where we envision that extra 10,000 residents to be. So it'll identify those centers and edges. It'll be a way to look and think about the island in 3D, and think about where we want to have those primary and secondary centers in those areas for growth, and where we want to see areas of conservation and preservation. And then that project is kind of like going from the vision and our plan that sets our vision and our tenets and guiding principles, then down to that growth framework map, further down into district planning, which gets to a parcel level, and then we adopt a future land use map. From there, it becomes working through policy and LMO and becomes part of our code. And that's right at the ground level. So this is really taking what we've built upon with district planning and just bringing it from 30,000 feet further down through all of those levels. So that's kind of the overall vision for the project. Really, I'm here before you today to to give you information on where we're headed and make sure that we're setting the correct scope for the overall project. We met last week with the project development team internally, as well as the consultant team, to work on scope and overall how we're going to strategically work through these projects. And especially when we get to district planning, what does that look like? How are we going to work with the community? What level of community engagement? And so far, what we've talked about is a very robust community engagement program. And that, as Sean had mentioned, that these are all really building upon the work that we've already done. And part of the work that the consultant team has already been working on is that conditions and trends analysis, which will give us the information and data we need. And we know that this will be the microphone into the communities. Certainly all topics we will hear about through this lens of community engagement. And then I think as short-term rentals were discussed today, how does that weave into district planning? And then how does it weave into perhaps the LMO amendment project that we'll talk to you about next month? So overall, the full program, as we described, is really well integrated with the LMO project as well. Again, we'll talk about that project next month and what the scope is for that. And I think Sean indicated what that project loosely entails, but we'll have more information on that next month. Do you have any questions? Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, you're still in charge, okay? So this is exciting. There will be a significant community engagement component to this. I've gone through some exercises in other communities through the Urban Land Institute where they've come in and they've done these reality checks. And it looks at the community in 3D, right? So where is the development intensity and levels? How is it distributed? And then it makes some assumption to say, here's roughly what we think the right additional mix would be. And then the community works to place that, sometimes it's poker chips or Legos or whatever, but it's a 3D representation of the community. And if you looked at an intensity center like Coligny or Shelter Cove Town Center or Harbor Town, is there an opportunity to add some more in that to protect areas that should be protected? So it's not just adding more in those areas, it is let's reduce development intensity in some areas and move those to where it's appropriate to have that. So as part of this process, that's what we'd like to do, is those similar exercises, have the community help guide where they think that development should occur. And so I wanted to make sure I brought that in. We'll bring you a draft growth framework map and the draft district map for review. We want to know today if we're on the right direction, and then we'll keep checking in as we move through the process on these key items to bring forward for consideration.
Thank you. Questions or comments from?
Sorry, I just have one more comment on the end result or deliverable package for this effort. Similar to Mid-Island District, it was a bound book. We envision each district to be part of an overall package, but it can be pulled out as individual chapters or sections. So it will look similar to Mid-Island District overall. in how that was formatted, and so that's kind of the overall deliverable concept.
Thank you, Missy. Glenn?
Thank you. Missy, thank you for this presentation. This is really exciting. We're going in the right direction here. But for a fuller understanding for someone that's not been through this exercise before, are we talking about this map will be available electronically to all of the residents of the island? Okay. And then as you drill down deeper into the map, you will see individual neighborhoods. Will those show overlays of the applicable zoning that applies there?
They will, just like Mid-Island District, it will go through an exercise to look at existing zoning, existing land use, and then future land use. And as we get through that district planning and hear from residents on, are those uses appropriate? Is the intensity and the density appropriate? And we'll calibrate with the recommendation section for each district.
It sounds outstanding. We've heard so much today about short-term rentals, something we're all concerned about and are trying to deal with. Will short-term rental properties also be identified as you drill down and define points into this map?
That will be part of the conditions and trends analysis. We'll have all metrics on a variety of points of data, and short-term rentals will be one of those included in the menu of conditions and trends that we'll analyze.
So beyond conditions and trends, my question is, will it be available on the map? Will you be looking at an individual parcel or a neighborhood and how many short-term rentals are there? We're mining the data right now of the number of short-term rentals that are here and where they're located through our program in the short-term rental ordinance and the licensing that is being required. So I want to make sure that that data is going to be available on this map to try to deal with this very difficult issue of short-term rentals.
Councilman Samber, we can certainly develop a hub and dashboard that has all of these different layers to include. You know, the growth framework map is really a high level, let's say 30,000 foot level, that looks at where you have centers, where you have edges that you want to protect, and then transition areas. The detail will come in the district planning. We'll evaluate opportunities and risks within each one of those districts, like we did for Mid-Island, and calibrate a future land use condition and map that pushes us in that direction. It'll require additional code changes to change the zoning to match, and the future land use map should guide decision-making going forward, and then the zoning map is your tool, your regulatory tool as part of your land management ordinance to make that happen. We will have the ability to overlay the distribution of short-term rentals within the districts and an overall island-wide map as well, and that's part of what the capabilities of having this short-term rental program and GovOS tracking this and mapping it and verifying. We'll have that data to show on a map. Yes, sir.
So I understand that we're talking about 30,000 feet right now, and that would not show at that, but we've had so many concerns about short-term rentals. I wanted to try to drill down to the point that that will be available. You have, each of you has mentioned that there will be considerable opportunity for public input. We need to do that by going out into the community rather than just having those meetings here in town council. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
This is an exciting time, and I look forward to it.
Sean or Missy, just an interjection. It's my understanding that GovOS will be identifying on a map short-term rentals in advance of what this process might be, so the public will be able to do that.
And I think that April 15th report is the first, well, it's the first quarter report, is the first one that we feel comfortable releasing to include distribution. Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Tam?
Just wanted to pick up on that aspect that you were talking about with regard to short-term rentals. There are a variety of different types of short-term rentals. Many of them create issues across our island. But I'd like to see an identified data point that shows how many of those are owned by LLCs and how many short-term rentals those LLCs own in total. Because that's a different animal. No, none of them are less equal. But that's a different animal that I'd like to see a data point on. Thanks.
Nothing else on this particular subject?
Other than great job.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Thank you, Missy. Thank you, Sean, for the report. I think it'd be helpful picking up on some of Mr. Stanford's questions. I think a lot of us are familiar with a zoning map, but we have no idea what a growth management map or growth framework map, looks like. Could we, and I'm looking at the outline you prepared in the staff report today, I think it might be helpful to define that term. And if there is an example that perhaps we or the public could see about what we're talking about, because you know, I'm pretending like I'm a satellite and looking down now for a 3D, and I can't do that. But some sort of way for us to understand that. The other thing is that I think it might be helpful. I'm really glad we're going to have community sessions, and I agree that it should be in the communities. I think that'd be very helpful. And I think it'd be good to see a timeline of how that would work out. I know you're probably still in the initial stages of figuring that out, but as soon as we have some sort of idea about how that will progress and maybe which areas will be included. The other thing is that when you're going to drill down to districts in the outline, it includes Jonesville, which is great, but I think we ought to know how we're going to figure out which of the next districts, because that might drive some of the community sessions. I'm only guessing at that. You know, who gives you the ideas about which districts should be included in the list? And I think we need to know that, and that would be helpful to us and to the community as well. The other thing that bothers me is that the comprehensive plan calls for, I'm not sure if you call it an appetite for growth, but to grow from 40,000 to 50,000 residents. And what does that mean? I'm bothered by that. I don't know, you know, I look back at the comp plan and see the language there and how that was described. But I think because one of our strategies that the town council adopted at our strategic work session over 2 days was growth management, which is why y'all are here today to make these reports to us. But does that change based on that data and the comp plan? I think we need to look at that. And we've talked a little bit about, and I think you mentioned it in your report, the balance between, if we're talking about full-time residents growing from 40 to 50,000, how do we balance that with those who come and visit, and how many of those are here at one time? So I think we need to look at the data from that point of view very carefully when we're looking at growth management. I look forward to this work. I'm excited about it. You probably heard me before say, instead of pumping the brakes on growth management, I've been pumping the gas. And so I really appreciate it. And I look forward to hearing more about the proposed LMO amendments to deal with growth management issues. So thank you.
Thank you. Of course, I support this direction. I think it's critical for the council and staff to make good decisions for the future, and for the public to have some reassurance where this community is headed. There are two aspects or benefits of what you're proposing. One is it will allow us to preserve areas of the island in perpetuity that should be preserved in perpetuity. And secondly, it will allow the community to understand edge conditions. And what do I mean by that? At the public comments session earlier, people from the motor coach made a comment about the intrusion of a water facility right next door to them. That's an edge condition that is unfortunate. And I think what we're talking about is better understanding how we protect our edge conditions for the higher and better use of the residents. And so I think that's those two elements. How are we going to preserve the areas of the community that need to be preserved? And not only in natural environment, but neighborhoods as well. And then secondly, how are we going to protect the edge conditions of residential areas in the community? So I gather from our consensus up here Missy, that we're headed in a good direction, and we look forward to hearing more about it next month and the month after. Thank you. Next on the item, discussion of establishing a town of Hilton Head Island planning districts. Is that incorporated already in what you talked about, or is, okay, thank you. Both of those items were discussed at the same time. Item C, consideration of an ordinance updating the local comprehensive beach management plan for the town of Hilton Head Island pursuant to the requirements of the South Carolina Beachfront Management Act. This is something that the state requires of our community and other localities along the ocean. Jeff, please. Jeff Buckaloo.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Jeff Buckaloo. I'm the town engineer for the town of Hilton Head Island. This item has come before the Planning Commission, received unanimous approval. It then came before the Community Services Public Safety Committee, and then Town Council. At the last council meeting in January when it was discussed, it was remanded back to committee, to this Public Planning Committee, and there were a few edits and changes discussed that we have incorporated into the plan. I have a presentation here that I will not go through the whole thing. It's been presented before to council and committees, but I did want to address the changes, and here they are. The full plan, the update to the plan is in the packet included on the website and for this meeting. Here are the pages. There are 4 items that were changed. The first item was mention of where the chamber promotes our beaches. We wanted to say the preservation and sustainability of our beach. That is also the 4th item, the same thing in a different reference. The subsection heading of a climate should be adaptation and sea level rise plan. We're going to call that the resilience plan going forward. And then there was a mention of a past committee, a disaster recovery committee that did their mission and completed their work and was then disbanded after the recovery plan was adopted by council and the debris management plan. So we omitted that from the plan. So those are the changes from the plan that was put forth to town council and was reviewed by planning commission and past committees. One thing I would like to show, if anyone questions why we do what we do and why this is so important. I've been doing this for a short while. Scott Liggett did it for decades, and we're fortunate to have the same coastal engineering consultant that has worked and engineered and monitored our beaches for over 30 years. And those folks tell me when I meet other city managers, city engineers, public works directors, and consultants that we are the gold standard. We are what people want to be. We have a self-sustaining funding source through accommodations tax. We have a fenced account with a beach preservation fee that helps fund our projects. So we can choose to go after grants from the state and the federal governments if we choose to do so on these renourishment projects. But we don't have to. We're really, stewards of our own beaches and our own projects and how we want to do them. We have to get permits, of course. That we can't go without that. But if you look here, we didn't have a program before 1990. The town was incorporated in '83, and one of the things early councils wished to do was develop a program to renourish and sustain our beaches. You see this picture. These are all from the same vantage point, 4 pictures over time. That house there with the, is that a gable roof line? Is that correct? With the high windows. House has since been removed, but anyhow, the pictures were taken from the same vantage point. And in 1990, when it was every property owner for themselves, you see the rock revetments and things people had to place to keep the ocean from eroding their lands. So many good things, not only the recreation and commerce and everything that the beaches bring, habitat, et cetera, but for resiliency. I was at a conference here a few months ago and looking at what Ian did up near Pawleys Island, some areas that had recently been renourished and some that hadn't. And the ones that had been recently renourished withstood the surge fine and very minor erosion and little property damage. Those that had not been renourished suffered bad property damage, and that was a low Cat 1.
Jeff,
So, yes, sir.
And the connection to our conversation is that without the beach management plan being updated, we would, at that point, be jeopardizing our renourishment permits.
Yes, it helps us, yes, sir. It is, the State Beachfront Management Act requires coastal communities that, like us, that have a beach program, have a beach management plan updated. Every 10 years, it is adopted by OCRM. We had our last plan adopted by OCRM in 2017. They asked for a 5-year interim update, which is what we're doing through this ordinance, adopting that. And it's updating the statistics and the facts and the beach surveys, et cetera. And so we're updating it in that regard, and we'll submit it to them. But yes, it will help with our permitting. And a little bit of a sidebar, there is a bill before the Senate and the House right now for beach renourishment funding. Senator Campson has sponsored that bill, and what it will do is devote a line item funding within South Carolina Parks, Recs, and Tourism Department, an annual recurring account. They're looking at $8 to $10 million initially, and it will come from 2% of the admissions tax. Admissions tax is anything like a show, a ball game, a movie, anything you pay admission to, they tax that and it goes into a pot. And so that's huge. That's really important for a lot of the coastal communities, including us, if we choose to go for that funding through a future grant.
Yeah. Questions or comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Buckaloo, for that report. And also want to thank you and the other staff members who met with me with my dog-eared version of the beach management plan and my list of 15 questions, comments, and suggestions. And so I really appreciate that. I think we've come up with some good language to make some amendments, and I appreciate that. I also pointed out that a lot of the plan calls for amendments to the LMO, including mass scale and density, and some other things which the staff is addressing with the other process, so I appreciate that. Also, there are suggestions to amendments to Chapter 8, which deals with the beach itself, and we talked about those, and that'll be a different process to go through those possible amendments. There was some language in the plan that appeared to be a bit dated, and so we've taken care of that. But most importantly, I think is the language, I'm sorry, the language went that away on the dais, but the language which concerned me in the plan was to coordinate with the Chamber of Commerce and tourism efforts to promote the beach. And I think we're looking at a different focus now, so we're adding the language to promote the preservation and sustainability of our beach. And I think that's very important for the community to hear. In addition, one of the focuses, one of the 15 strategies is adopting a resiliency plan, which I know you're also working on.
Yes.
And there was some language which referred to climate adaptation and sea level rise, and now we have made it clear that it's moving towards the resiliency plan. So I really appreciate the time and the information from the staff to move this forward.
Thank you, Ms. Bryson. Glenn, any thoughts, comments?
I just want to say I'm proud that this community has made such a significant investment in the preservation of one of our most important assets. This is great. You're doing a great job. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Thank you. Over the time that we've been coming to Hilton Head since 1983 with our young children and now our grandchildren, the beach is a primary spot that we return to day after day. And the preservation that's been undertaken is obvious, it's appreciated, and you guys do great work. And it's a tribute to Scott in many ways. And thank you so much for the hard work that you're carrying on.
Yeah, thank you.
Ms. Bryson, you have one more comment?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I forgot, even though it was standing right in front of me. I'd ask a question about, that had been raised before, about the gap, and forgive me if I'm not using the right technical terms, but the gap between the state's regulation, thank you, perfect map, the state's regulation and the town's jurisdiction, especially with regard to installation of seawalls and other kinds of management tools that might be contrary to the rest of the town's plan. And I see you pulled up a map. You were going to try to help me out with, is there a gap still, and what, if anything, do we need to do, or should we do, or are we doing about not having a gap?
Yes, ma'am. We don't think there's a gap. We have the coastal protection overlay zoning district in the LMO, and there's a transition area district as well. I pulled up an example slide here, and the area, the seawall case that folks have heard about in Sea Pines. There were 5 contiguous properties there. You'll see the little beach access walk up to the upper right, but those 5 properties banded together, pulled their money, and hired a contractor and said, we want to build a seawall. I just mentioned we have a great renourishment program, and that's what most folks rely upon on the beach. Well, these 5 decided, look at the cost benefit and the risk. What if we didn't, whatever their thought process was, what if we didn't continue to renourish? What if we got hit by back-to-back successive, highly erosive storms, et cetera? Anyhow, they made the decision. They wanted to put their money into a wall. And you see the red line there is the OCRM setback line, so they could not go beyond that, encroach seaward beyond that. There's the OCRM baseline, which right at this location coincides with the town's beachfront line. Our beachfront line, we took the 1999 OCRM baseline and we set it and locked it in. We said that's our beachfront line for the town standards. And the lime green hatched area is our coastal protection area. So at this segment of the beach, they did not encroach beyond the setback line, within the coastal protection line. They went, whatever it is, 5 feet back. You can see the hedgerow or the dark line on their property. So it's on private property. Their property lines coincide with that red line thereabouts. But, they put it on their property. And the lawsuits from some environmental groups stem from, did they get proper coastal zone consistency permitting and NPDES stormwater permitting, other things. But we feel that there are no gaps or loopholes. We have good regulations to protect the beach front in that regard. And you can see there the way the LMO states it is the more restrictive rule, whether state or town shall govern. And if there's any conflict, we defer to the state. So those are the regs.
Yeah, and I'd saved this article from, I think it's 2018, and Ricky Parker with the Coastal Conservation League was quoted saying that if we want to try to address the seawall question and this gap question to extend, to have an amendment in our code, and that's what I was asking about. So it's your view that we do not need to do that. Is that correct?
Do we need an amendment? Right now, I say no. As we go through and look at LMO amendments, we'll consider that. We'll look at different things.
Okay, fair enough. All right. And I think the other one was a policy against seawalls, and as I understand it, this plan does have that policy in there. Is it?
And the state does as well. The state has a position of preservation, and no new hardening of the beaches are allowed.
Great. Thanks very much for addressing that question.
Jeff, thank you very much for the presentation. I'll ask for a motion and then allow the public to address the dais if they choose to. Is there a motion?
Chairman, I have a motion. I move that the Public Planning Committee forward the proposed ordinance 23-01, updating the local comprehensive beach management plan for the town of Hilton Head Island pursuant to the requirements of the South Carolina Beachfront Management Act, and recommend adoption by the Town Council with the following revisions. 1, page 6, edited item F to add, quote, preservation and sustainability, unquote. Continue to coordinate with the Chamber of Commerce tourism efforts to promote preservation and sustainability of our beach. 2, page 14, edited subsection heading add resilience plan, resilience plan, climate adaptation and sea level rise. 3, page 89, edited third item to delete mention of Disaster Recovery Commission. The Town Council adopted the recovery plan in 2003, which was updated in 2014. The Disaster Recovery Commission was informed to work with staff to further research certain unresolved issues in the recovery plan. 4, page 90, edited item F to add preservation and sustainability in quotes. To continue to coordinate with the Chamber of Commerce tourism efforts to promote preservation and sustainability of the beach. I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. Today, beg your pardon, public comments. Anybody want to address Public Planning Committee? Seeing none, we'll bring it back. Any last-minute comments? Nothing. Today, would you call the roll, please?
Certainly. Ms. Bryson?
Yes.
Ms. Becker? Yes. Mr. Stanford?
Yes.
Mr. Ames?
Yes, passes unanimously. One last item, consideration of amendments to the calendar year 2023 Public Planning Committee meeting schedule. You've all seen it. Are there any comments or questions?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I understand the reason for this. I need to let you know that I will not be available on March 9. In reliance upon the previous schedule, my husband and I scheduled a trip out of state, so would not be available. Then the April 13 date is during the RBC Heritage Tournament.
Well, that may be amended by necessity. So,
Chair, as long as it was brought up, specific days, and hearing that Ms. Bryson won't be available on March 9th. My husband has an appointment at MUSC, so I will not be here on March 9th.
we'll look into that specifically, and Mr. Alford is here for either one of those if we can consider to move forward. Otherwise, Sadea will have to make an adjustment.
Sorry, I did have one other comment. In looking at the schedule, the town council meets the first and third weeks. The Finance Administrative Committee meets the first and third weeks. This will now move us, I think, to the second week. And I'm guessing the Community Services and Public Safety Committee is going to be changing its schedule because now it's the fourth week. That would mean we would meet every week during the month, except for 1, 2, 3, 4 months when a town council meeting is scheduled. So I'm hoping that we're not going to have to meet every week, even though I love being here.
Well, I think the purpose of this adjustment is to allow the Public Planning Committee to meet in advance of the full council so that we can move information and motions forward.
Which I support.
And just a note that the Community Service Public Safety meeting has not entertained a change in our schedule.
Good. Mr. Chairman, I would move that we adopt the schedule as promoted, subject to further revision as needs require.
Thank you. Is there a second? Sadea, would you call the roll, please? First of all, any public comment on this? Seeing none, thank you. Sadea?
Certainly. Ms. Bryson?
Yes.
Ms. Becker? Yes. Mr. Stanford?
Yes.
Mr. Ames?
Yes. And at this time, I would like to adjourn the meeting, but thank the public for persevering. And have a good day.